Have you ever stopped to reflect that the moment of greatest vulnerability for your health occurs in the first 5 minutes after waking up, even before you put on your slippers or drink your coffee? For those who have passed 60, the simple act of transitioning from a horizontal to a vertical position is not just a banal routine, but a true stress test for your cardiovascular and neurological systems. There is a silent and often ignored danger lurking in the shadows of your room, waiting for a sudden movement to trigger events that could permanently alter your autonomy. Ignoring the subtle signals your body sends when getting up is a dangerous surrender of control over your own biology, opening doors to risks that most prefer not to face until it is too late. Mastering this start is the first step toward longevity. Imagine that your body is a sophisticated machine that, during the night, operated in a regime of low consumption and stabilized pressure, but now suddenly needs to face the relentless force of gravity. This abrupt change in posture requires your heart and blood vessels to work in perfect harmony to pump blood against the weight of your own body, ensuring that oxygen reaches the brain in fractions of a second. However, what many consider a fleeting dizziness or a slight darkening of vision when standing up is, in reality, a cry for help from a vascular system that is failing to compensate for this demand. Today, you will discover a powerful opportunity hidden in this awakening. By learning to pilot your morning biology with precision, you will not only avoid falls and vascular accidents, but also take total command of your vitality and functional independence for the coming decades of life. The lack of attention regarding the first movements of the day happens because most people were taught to view old age as an inevitable process of fragility, where small discomforts are accepted as normal. However, after completing 6 decades of life, what used to be an automatic and instantaneous adjustment of the circulatory system begins to suffer a biological delay known as baroreflex failure. The pressure sensors located in your arteries, which should detect the change from a lying to a standing position, become less responsive and take precious seconds to send the contraction signal to the blood vessels. This systemic slowness causes the flow of oxygen to the brain to drop sharply at the very moment you need balance the most, transforming a simple morning dizziness into a critical warning sign that should never be ignored by anyone seeking autonomy. This phenomenon affects millions of seniors silently, masking itself as atypical fatigue or a weight in the lower limbs right upon waking, leading many to underestimate the real danger. The biology of aging brings with it vascular and endothelial rigidity that makes it difficult to efficiently pump blood against the force of gravity, requiring much more effort from a heart that is already dealing with other demands. Furthermore, during the hours of nocturnal rest, the body undergoes a natural process of slight dehydration, which makes the blood thicker and more viscous precisely at the moment when the vessels are less elastic. This combination of dense blood circulating through stiffer pipes creates a scenario of high peripheral resistance, turning awakening into a window of extreme vulnerability where the cardiovascular system operates at the limit of its immediate compensation capacity. Adding to these vascular changes, waking up is accompanied by a physiological peak of cortisol and adrenaline, hormones that raise the heart rate and central blood pressure to prepare the organism for activity. In a young system, this peak is well tolerated, but in an aging body, it can overload the coronary and cerebral arteries that already present some level of structural fragility. At the same time, the vestibular system, responsible for your balance in the inner ear, suffers natural wear and tear over the years, making the recovery from any small morning imbalance much more complex and slow. When you ignore this biological reality and stand up thoughtlessly, you are essentially ignoring that your cellular machine is operating under disproportionate pressure, which exponentially increases the risk of catastrophic events that could be easily prevented with the right knowledge. The central conflict threatening the longevity of the millions of people over 60 lies in a seemingly harmless but deeply dangerous habit: irrational haste upon waking and the sudden rising from bed. Many of us have been conditioned to respond immediately to alarm clocks or external commitments, ignoring that the aging body needs a careful mechanical and physiological transition to preserve its vascular integrity. When you jump from horizontal rest to vertical activity without proper preparation, You are subjecting your heart and brain to a pressure shock that accelerates functional decline and compromises your physical autonomy. What is at stake here is not just a moment of fleeting imbalance, but the preservation of your ability to walk without assistance, to maintain mental clarity, and to avoid hospitalizations that frequently mark the beginning of the end of motor independence and personal dignity. The silent error that drastically reduces life expectancy lies in the normalization of symptoms that should be treated as red alerts of an imminent systemic failure. When feeling a brief dizziness, blurred vision, or slight tingling upon standing, it is common for the elderly to attribute this to normal age-related fatigue, without realizing that their body is losing the battle against gravity. This negligence masks the fact that the baroreflex is failing to irrigate the brain adequately, creating a biological time bomb that can culminate in a stroke, an acute myocardial infarction, or a hip fracture. Understanding that these signs are indicators of a temporary inability for circulatory compensation is fundamental to taking back control. Your qualified longevity depends on the courage to face these morning risks as biological variables that can be managed with total precision. The first fundamental pillar to understanding this dynamic is the biology of awakening, a process that acts as a true morning stress test for your organism. When you are lying in absolute rest, your heart works with a minimum load because blood circulates easily due to the absence of vertical gravity in your vascular system. However, the instant the alarm clock rings or daylight invades your room, a critical transition from inertia to activity begins, requiring an immediate and coordinated response from your blood vessels. For someone who is already 60 years old or older, this demand to pump blood, which has naturally become thicker due to overnight dehydration, requires impeccable biological precision so that the brain does not suffer from the sudden lack of oxygen and essential nutrients during a hurried and careless morning rise without preparation. Understanding that this biological mechanics is responsible for your safety removes the weight of individual guilt and places the focus where it truly matters, on the conscious piloting of your own cellular and vascular biology. The aging body is not necessarily broken, but it operates with a much smaller margin of error than in youth, requiring you to prepare the ground before any direct exposure to gravity. By recognizing that venous return needs a deliberate stimulus to overcome the resistance of stiffer arteries, you begin to perceive the need to adopt a safety protocol instead of acting on morning impulse. This knowledge prepares you to understand that every movement made at the edge of the bed is, in reality, an act of preserving qualified longevity, ensuring that your cardiovascular system can stabilize central blood pressure before facing the day with total autonomy. We now move to the second pillar, which addresses an extremely common and equally dangerous phenomenon known as orthostatic hypotension, or the killer dizziness that occurs when standing up quickly. This signal usually manifests as a momentary darkening of vision, a slight sensation of floating, or sudden weakness in the legs just in the first 30 seconds after you stand on the floor. What is happening internally is that your brain is suffering from momentary microischemia, an acute lack of blood flow caused by the delay in the response of the pressure sensors in your main arteries. Ignoring these recurring episodes, believing they are just a natural part of the aging process, is a strategic error that puts your autonomy at constant risk, as every dizzy spell is a latent opportunity for severe syncope that can lead to catastrophic falls in your own home during the early hours of your morning. The consequences of systematically ignoring these brief lapses in balance are severe and can radically transform the trajectory of your life from one moment to the next without any warning. A syncope or fainting spell caused by the abrupt drop in cerebral pressure frequently results in cranial trauma, or even worse, in hip and femur fractures that are devastating for those over 60. Statistically, a bone fracture at this stage of life precipitates the definitive loss of functional independence and requires prolonged hospitalizations that open the doors to other serious, unwanted, and often irreversible secondary complications. On the other hand, by learning to identify and correct this circulatory pattern, you preserve your structural mobility and prevent a simple mechanical event from prematurely ending your active phase of life, maintaining total control over your steps and your individual freedom for a long time in this land of opportunities. At this point in our journey, I realize that you are someone who truly values your autonomy and wishes to maintain total control over your own health as the years advance with wisdom. That is why I would like to take a small pause to recognize your commitment to longevity and invite you to become a more active part of our community in your daily life. If you have ever felt dizzy when getting up or are concerned about the safety of a loved one, comment below with the word control so I know this content is helpful for your strengthening. Also, take this moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, ensuring you never miss the essential guidance we share here to strengthen your dignity and your physical and mental power in old age. Your presence immensely strengthens our educational and transformative purpose. The third pillar of this knowledge focuses on the silent red flags, which are fundamental neurological indicators that usually manifest precisely at the peak of the morning adrenaline rush upon awakening. We must be attentive to any asymmetrical tingling, especially when it occurs on only one side of the body, or a sudden difficulty in articulating the first word of the day when trying to speak to someone. These signs, although often fleeting, are clear indications of microclots that may be moving or coronary spasms caused by increased blood viscosity and the vascular tension of an accelerated awakening. Often, the body tries to warn us that a major ischemic event is being brewed behind the scenes of our circulation, and our ability to interpret these symptoms early is what differentiates a full life from an existence marked by permanent, irreversible, and disabling physical limitations. In addition to neurological issues, atypical pressure in the chest, or even a discomfort radiating to the jaw during the first morning movements are warnings that can never be underestimated by anyone seeking longevity. These discomforts reflect the struggle of the coronary arteries to provide oxygenated blood to the heart muscle at the exact moment when the body demands a sudden increase in the rhythm and force of vascular contraction. Ignoring these warnings is allowing a transient ischemic attack to silently evolve into a massive stroke or an acute myocardial infarction, events that occur with a statistically higher frequency in the early hours of the morning. Preventive aid, or the immediate change of mental posture in this golden window of care, separates a lucid and independent life from severe invalidity, being the real watershed in maintaining your physical dignity and full motor autonomy. The relationship between these signs and qualified longevity is direct and unquestionable, as the brain and heart are the organs that suffer most from the lack of oxygenation caused by morning circulatory inefficiency. When we understand that decline is not a sudden and random event, but rather the accumulation of small, neglected episodes of ischemia or vascular stress, we begin to look at awakening with renewed and strategic seriousness. Every heartbeat and every neurological synapse depends on the fluidity with which blood travels through your arteries after hours of absolute rest in a horizontal and relaxed position. By remaining vigilant and conscious of these red alerts, you act as your own biological guardian, ensuring that your internal machine continues to operate with precision and that the doors to degenerative diseases remain closed by the strength of your constant and disciplined active prevention at every new dawn. We then reach the fourth and most transformative pillar of our entire conversation, the implementation of the powerful Rising Protocol, a set of deliberate actions to take total control of your daily awakening. This protocol is not just a set of rules, but a change in philosophy that recognizes the need to prepare your circulatory system before challenging the force of vertical gravity. It begins while you are still under the covers, through small circular movements with your feet and rhythmic contractions of your calves, which act as your second heart, pushing venous blood back to the upper torso. This simple act starts the process of stabilizing central blood pressure gradually and safely, allowing your cardiovascular system to wake up at the same pace as your consciousness, avoiding unnecessary and very dangerous morning thermal or pressure shocks to your integrity. The centerpiece of this strategic ritual is the non-negotiable 30-second rule at the edge of the bed, where you sit calmly before attempting to support your full body weight on your legs. This time interval is crucial for the baroreflex to recalibrate the tone of your arteries and ensure that blood flow to the brain is maintained in a constant, robust, and efficient manner. During these golden seconds, you must practice immediate hydration, drinking a glass of water that should already be strategically positioned on your bedside table since the night before your rest. The ingestion of this liquid acts by thinning the viscosity of the blood that thickened during deep sleep, facilitating your heart's work and lubricating the gears of your circulation to face the day's challenges with much more safety and renewed vitality in every cell of your being. The benefits of adopting this protocol daily are profound and cumulative, creating a solid base of safety that protects you against morning heart attacks and catastrophic falls that ruin autonomy in old age. By stabilizing blood pressure in a controlled manner and ensuring that your brain receives the necessary oxygen supply before the walk to the bathroom, you start your day feeling firm, lucid, and fully in command of your motor faculties. This routine practice works as a daily longevity insurance, sending a clear message to your body that it will be operated with respect, care, and superior technical intelligence. By mastering the first minutes of your morning, you are not just avoiding immediate accidents, you are paving the way for a strengthened aging, where dignity and independence are preserved through your own conscious and deliberate preventive action in the face of all challenges. Consider the story of two men of the same age who made opposite decisions upon waking on an ordinary day. The first, rushed by a commitment, jumped out of bed at the sound of the alarm, completely ignoring the slight darkening of vision he felt for a brief second. Unfortunately, his cerebral pressure plummeted before he reached the door, resulting in a severe fall against the furniture that fractured his hip and started a painful cycle of dependence on caregivers and the total loss of his previous mobility. In contrast, observe the second man, who learned to respect the timing of his internal biology and today enjoys enviable vitality. He reserves 3 minutes to activate his calves, sits calmly to drink water, and stands up with a firmness that protects his heart. While the first man struggles to regain basic steps, the second walks miles, proving that the difference between tragedy and longevity lies in the conscious piloting of the morning body. The process of human aging is not a random event or a conspiracy of fate against your vitality, but rather the cumulative result of decades of small biological impacts and daily decisions. We need to understand that physical decline does not occur suddenly or unexpectedly. It is, in fact, a progressive construction that gains strength every time we neglect the warning signs that the body discreetly sends at dawn. When you choose to respect the first minutes of your awakening, you are not just avoiding an immediate fall, but you are rewriting the narrative of your own cellular biology in the long term. Small morning habits, such as conscious vascular activation, accumulate invaluable value over the years, functioning as a shield against systemic fragility. Aging with dignity requires the deep understanding that every deliberate choice today is a direct investment in maintaining your autonomy tomorrow. The balance between recognizing morning dangers and the certainty of the capacity for overcoming them is what defines a truly powerful and conscious aging. Although it is unsettling to accept that a hurried postural transition can trigger ischemic events or life-changing falls, hope lies in the extraordinary simplicity of the biological solutions that are within your immediate reach. You who have made it this far demonstrate an admirable commitment to your own story. Therefore, if this knowledge makes sense to you, be sure to share it with your family and close friends who also deserve this protection. For every risk of hypotension or cardiac overload discussed, there is a compensatory action that neutralizes the danger and restores your functional safety even before you leave the room. You should not be afraid, but rather have a refined instruction manual to operate your cellular machine with maximum efficiency, preserving your dignity and physical autonomy with simple and profound changes. If you choose to ignore these protocols and continue treating your awakening with the negligence of youth, the implications for your future can be devastating. The absence of a careful transition facilitates falls that result in frequent hospitalizations, where immobility accelerates cognitive decline and muscle mass loss, creating a cycle of family dependence that is difficult to reverse. The scenario for those who neglect their own biology is marked by the loss of the freedom to come and go, transforming simple tasks into monumental challenges that require constant help. In contrast, those who assume a preventive stance transform every morning into a victory for autonomy, ensuring that the brain and heart remain protected against time. Choosing active prevention is ensuring that you will continue to be the protagonist of your own life, maintaining unshakable dignity and motor independence throughout aging. Perhaps the most surprising thing is to discover that the feeling of vigor when quickly jumping out of bed is not a sign of health, but rather a stress response from your nervous system, which dangerously overloads your arteries. Often, the most ignored item on this list of care is the temperature of the environment. A cold shock when moving from warm covers to a cold floor can constrict your vessels so suddenly that blood pressure spikes in seconds, generating a counterintuitive risk of a heart attack even for someone who feels in top physical shape. This revelation changes the perception of awakening. Slowness is not a sign of weakness, but a tool of high biological performance. Understanding that your body needs an acceleration ramp is the master key to renewing your attention and protecting your physical integrity against fatal or disabling ischemic events today. To make this knowledge real in your life starting tomorrow, follow these surgical actions. Before pushing back the sheets, dedicate 1 minute to rhythmically contracting your calves. Think of them as pumps that return vital blood to your tired heart. Next, apply the non-negotiable 30-second rule. Sit on the edge of the bed, with your feet firm on the floor, and drink a full glass of water. This simple act thins the blood's viscosity and allows your pressure sensors to calibrate properly. While sitting, perform a quick 5-second mental self-examination. Can you articulate a clear phrase? Is there any weakness on one side of your body? If everything is firm, stand up slowly, feeling your stability. By observing your own organism's response to gravity, you transform a risky transition into a moment of absolute and total biological control. As we reach the end of this journey of profound knowledge, it becomes evident that real control over your aging process starts long before the first coffee. It lies in the wisdom of respecting the first 5 minutes of your daily awakening. We understood that the act of getting up is not a trivial routine, but a moment of extremely high biological demand where active prevention against ischemic events and catastrophic falls becomes your greatest shield of qualified longevity. Small deliberate decisions, such as hydrating while still seated and activating your calves, accumulate decades of positive impact on your motor independence and physical dignity. In light of everything we have learned, I ask you, are you willing to abandon the haste and take command of your own biology tomorrow? Leave your comment sharing your reflection. Subscribe to the channel to strengthen your journey, and share this video with those you love right now.